My husband and I don't want kids. My mother-in-law is big into family in the traditional sense. She has been pushy with us about having kids since we got married. Literally the week after we got engaged, she started asking. My husband has always changed the subject, and has even told her that it's really none of her business. Every time we see her, she asks. Everything we do is built around the idea of us having kids. 3 years into our marriage, my husband said we might not even have kids and mother-in-law would not hear it. At year 4, husband had a vasectomy and I had a tubal. So this weekend we were all at their home enjoying some barbecue and drinks and everything. When I get up to grab a beer, my mother-in-law asks me if maybe I should drink water instead, because wink wink nudge nudge. You never know. I was annoyed by this and said, there's really no chance. Mil, all wide grin, said, oh come on. It's time for you two to finally get serious. Put down the beer and tell us when we can finally expect you two to finally make your family official. I said we've been official for about 5 years now, Mil, and drink the beer. Husband laughs with me. Mother-in-law gets more annoyed and says, you won't be real, last names, until you bless us with babies. Husband repeated. After about 15 minutes of the usual comments, I finally snapped and said, husband got snipped. I had my tubes tied. We're not having kids. You need to stop bringing it up. Period. Well, I thought I started WWII. She started crying and stormed off. Family looked at us with disgust and stormed off to comfort her. We left. Party kinda ended. The social media bullshit started shortly after. Vague posts, links about how motherhood is a woman's greatest calling, listicles about how unhappy childless women are, etc. Some meme about how I guess I wasn't a good enough mother and won't be graduating to grandmother. It's obnoxious to the point that I just muted all of them. My mother-in-law finally called me this morning and told me that she was willing to put this all behind us if husband and I came over, and listened to her reasons that we really need to have kids. I told her no, that we are tired of her pushing this on us, and then she said, you two aren't prepared to be real, last name S. I'd like a refund for what we paid for the wedding. It wasn't that much. It was like $400 for the rehearsal dinner. I hung up on her. When recounting this to my friends, a few of them said that I was the asshole here for dropping it like that. But I don't think she was ever going to drop it if I didn't finally make a serious, direct comment about it. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I am a 24 years old female. I am the product of my mom having an affair. Fortunately, my dad decided to forgive my mom and keep me, and I had a pretty good upbringing. But I don't really look a lot like the rest of my family. I'm the only redhead, among other things, and I did ask questions of why am I the only one with? When I was 17, my mom took me out for ice cream and introduced me to my bio father. She said that she felt I was old enough to know the truth, and explained about her affair, while also making me promise I wouldn't tell my older sister, she's 27 in the present, and hammering home along with my bio father that he'd never be part of my life and didn't want me. It was a lot, I won't lie, but I learned to suck it up and move on with my life. Fast forward to the present. My big sis has always gravitated towards older men. We like to joke that it's the result of too many George Clooney movies growing up. And 2 months ago shared a picture of herself and her new boyfriend, who, to my shock, turned out to be my bio father. I debated what to do for a couple of days, then ultimately decided she needed the truth and told her. My sister did not take it well and dumped him, but she wasn't angry with me. Honestly, by now she's kinda amused, says that she's my mom and has extra power to boss me around now. My mom, on the other hand, is furious. She says I divulged something that wasn't my secret to share, and that I had no business telling anyone. That since bio father isn't related to my sister, it didn't matter if he dated my sister, and it wasn't like they were talking marriage anyway. It's been 2 months and she's still angry, still snide. Calls me a traitor and finds excuses to make loud comments about how I can't be trusted with anything private or important, so beware. At the time I thought I was doing the right thing, but I've never seen my mom this angry before. And she's sustained that anger for 2 solid months, so I'm starting to worry. My wife, Irene, is very fit. She likes working out and has a proper exercise regime, etc. She believes that if she feels good, she looks good, and she feels good working out, so who am I to stop her? My brother, Will, spent the latter half of last year going through a messy divorce and now needs a place to stay. Though my brother and I aren't very close, I figured he would only stay with us for a couple weeks until he got back on his feet. Will is a typical gym rat. He's always on a very strict diet, always working out and bragging about his gains. I've worked out with him a few times and he's a little obnoxious. He's always mad at you if you don't work at his pace and is always trying to correct your form. He's a pretty fit and muscular guy, but I don't like to exercise with him. Will has been pushing Irene to work out with him because, according to him, she won't be able to keep up with him. Irene mostly just shrugs him off with a laugh and tells him she would love to work out with him. Irene works out in the mornings, 3 times a week, and then does a run in the evening. But she's been busy this past week and hasn't been able to stick to her usual schedule. Will thinks that she's making excuses because she doesn't want to be embarrassed by him. Again, Irene just laughs him off. About 2 days ago, Irene and Will went on an early morning run. I didn't go with them, but the first thing I heard when Will entered the house was, "The only reason I couldn't keep up with you, Irene, is because you were sweating too much." I found this extremely comical, and kinda just laughed him off. Irene rolled her eyes and went to take a shower, so I thought that the conversation would die. However, Will just kept bringing up my wife's sweat. My wife went to work and he told her to make sure she doesn't sweat through her clothes, or when she called me in the middle of day. He yelled, "Tell the sweaty." I said hi. Of course, the comment aggravated me and I told him to knock it off and stop acting like a child. I thought that was the end of it, but he just kept going. By the end of the day, I was tired of his comments, but Irene seemed rather unfazed by them. When she served him food, he made a comment about her sweating into the food. At this point, I was at my wit's end and I told him to stop acting like a slow, referring to his running pace, loser, and eat his food. Will, of course, got angry, and said the only reason he was going slower than usual was because he was distracted by my wife's unhygienic sweat. Irene looked a bit offended by this, and I told Will that I would kick him out if he made another comment like that. He's been super pissed ever since. I jokingly told this story to a mutual friend and they agreed with Will. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. I didn't expect this amount of responses. I've decided to kick him out. He will be staying at a nearby hotel now.